Okay, so imagine this. October 4th, 1957. Across the U.S., people are maybe tuning their ham radios, and they suddenly pick up this simple sound. Beep, 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 beep. Right. The world's first artificial satellite. But, the sound itself, that wasn't really the shocker.
No, it was the rocket that launched it. That was the thing.
Exactly. Proof positive, the Soviet Union now had rockets powerful enough to throw things, potentially, weapons over huge distances, intercontinental.
And that signal didn't just start the space race. It really lit a fire under America's own ICBM program, changed everything in the Cold War dynamic.
And it's kind of amazing that one of the best places to understand that whole era is out on the quiet plains of western South Dakota.
That's right. Today we're looking at the Minuteman Missile National Historic Site. It's a really unique place.
Yeah, we've gathered, well, pretty much everything we could find. The history behind it, the tech, what it's actually like if you go there today, and all those practical bits you need if you're thinking about a visit, or even if you just want to get a handle on this piece of history from afar.
Our plan is really to walk you through it, bring the story to life, help you understand why this place matters. You can stand right there, face to face with the hardware and the human side of nuclear deterrence.
And it's important to know it's not just one single spot, right?
Yeah.
The park is actually spread out.
That's key. There are 3 main public areas, and each tells a different part of the story. You've got the visitor center, then the launch control facility, that's Delta 01, and the actual missile silo, Delta 09.
Okay, so let's rewind back to that Sputnik moment you mentioned, 1957. That really shifted the ground, didn't it?
Fundamentally, it wasn't just, they have a satellite. It demonstrated they had the rocket capability for long-range strikes. Serious capability.
Right, and President Eisenhower, he'd already established this policy, maintaining a massive capability to strike back. But the first U.S. ICBMs, things like Atlas and Titan, they weren't exactly rapid response weapons.
No, not at all. They were incredibly complex. Sources from back then called them handcrafted, just packed with parts. And the big issue was the fuel, liquid fuel.
Which is volatile, corrosive.
Exactly. So you couldn't just keep them fueled up and ready to go. They needed constant, careful maintenance.
And getting them ready to launch, the fueling process, could take up to 2 hours. That doesn't sound very push-button.
Far from it. One description called it needing the desperate and constant attention accorded a man receiving artificial respiration. Gives you a sense of how fragile and slow those early systems felt.
Yeah, it really does.
And that slowness, that vulnerability, is why the move to solid fuel rockets was such a massive leap forward strategically. People like Colonel Edward Hall really pushed for it.
Leading to, what was it initially called, Weapon System Q?
That was the code name, yeah.
Yeah.
Which then got renamed, very appropriately.
Minuteman.
Minuteman, because it could be ready in basically a minute. Launched fast.
How did solid fuel change things so much?
Well, solid fuel is stable. You can store the missile fueled, ready to go, vertically, inside a hardened underground silo. It's hidden, it's protected, and it needs way less day-to-day maintenance than the liquid-fueled ones.
So it was really America's first, integrated, ready-to-go nuclear deterrence system.
Pretty much. Ready in its lethal lair like a shotgun shell, as someone vividly put it.
And that meant they could deploy them on a scale that was just unthinkable before.
Absolutely. We're not talking a handful. Eventually, there were 100,000 Minuteman missiles deployed across 6 huge fields, mostly in the north-central U.S.
And South Dakota got a big chunk of those.
150 missiles, right.
Part of the 44th Strategic Missile Wing out of Ellsworth Air Force Base.
That's right. A major component.
And the structure of these fields is interesting, too. Squadrons broken into flights.
Yeah. Each squadron had 50 missiles. Those were divided into flights. And a typical flight setup was one manned launch control facility, the LCF, underground.
The command post.
Right. And that LCF was connected by buried cables to 10 unmanned missile silos, the launch facilities, or LFs, scattered across miles of prairie.
Wow. And building all this in South Dakota, starting in '61, the pace sounds intense.
Astonishingly fast. The goal they set was, get this, to dig and build these huge silos, 84 feet deep, 12 feet across, at a rate of a silo a day.
A silo a day? I mean, just think about the engineering, the logistics, especially out there, the weather.
Oh, yeah. Peter Kiewit's Sons was the main contractor, and you read accounts of them battling brutal, cold, heavy snow that first winter. Huge challenges. But they did it.
But beyond the concrete and steel, there's the human side, the Air Force personnel who lived this.
Absolutely critical. You have to remember, these places were staffed, on alert, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for nearly 30 years. constant readiness.
Not your average job description.
Not at all. The crews, usually 2 officers, worked down in those underground launch control centers, the LCCs. They'd pull these long tours, maybe 36 or 40 hours total, with 12-hour shifts locked down in that capsule.
Intense pressure. Isolation, too. Knowing what buttons you were sitting next to.
Immense pressure. But they developed their own ways of coping, their own culture, even humor. There's that famous story about the Delta flight crew.
Oh, the blast door. The huge, 8-ton door sealing the LCC.
That's the one. They decided to paint it.
To look like a Domino's pizza box.
Exactly. Complete with the slogan.
Worldwide delivery in 30 minutes or less, or your next one is free.
It's dark humor, yeah, but it tells you something about trying to stay sane in that environment, finding a little bit of normalcy under extraordinary circumstances.
And the technology kept evolving too, right? It wasn't just the original Minuteman.
No, Ellsworth got the upgrade to the Minuteman II system in the early 70s. That meant better range, bigger payload, more sophisticated targeting. A significant improvement.
And then came Minuteman III later, with the MIRV technology.
Right, MIRV, multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. That was another huge step. One missile could now carry several warheads, each able to hit a separate target. Really increased the deterrent capability.
So this whole Minuteman II era, the one represented at the historic site, it lasted for decades. What led to its deactivation?
Treaties. Specifically, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START, signed in the early 1990s. It mandated major cuts in U.S. and Soviet nuclear arsenals.
And the Minuteman II were part of those cuts.
They were, so the system was deactivated. But thankfully, there was recognition, both from the Air Force and the National Park Service, that this history needed to be preserved.
That a physical example of this Cold War system, intact, was historically vital.
Exactly. So in 1999, they worked together to preserve Delta 01, the launch control facility, and Delta 09, one of its missile silos, as a National Historic Site.
An incredible backstory. So for someone listening, maybe thinking about visiting, what's the experience like today? How do you actually explore this history on the ground?
Well, first off, location-wise, it's pretty convenient if you're traveling across South Dakota. It sits along a 15-mile stretch of Interstate 90, not far from Badlands National Park.
And those 3 distinct sites you mentioned earlier, where should people start?
It's definitely the visitor center. It's right off exit 131. You really need that context first. It lays the groundwork, the history, the technology, the human stories.
What kind of exhibits do they have?
They're really well done. They cover everything from the missile tech to what life was like for the crews, even the impact on local civilians. There's a display explaining the nuclear triad, bombers, submarines, and land-based missiles like Minuteman.
And they have a film.
Yeah, a good 30-minute film called Beneath the Plains sets the stage really well. And, important note, getting into the visitor center is free.
Okay, good to know. So after the visitor center gives you that base understanding, where next?
Well, a lot of people then go see the actual missile silo, Delta 09. That's off exit 116. This is where you get that sense of scale.
And you actually look down into the silo.
You do. There's a glass viewing enclosure built over the top. You look straight down 80 feet into the silo, and inside there's a replica Minuteman II missile. It's unarmed, of course, but it's the real dimensions. 12 feet in diameter.
Just standing there. Must be quite something.
It really is, because you're not just looking at a hole in the ground or a museum piece. You're looking at the place where an actual operational nuclear missile sat on alert for years.
Carrying a 1.2 megaton warhead, you said.
That's the payload for Minuteman II. And that number, 1.2 megatons, it's hard to grasp. But think about this. That single warhead was about 66 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
Wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Standing there, knowing that.
Yeah, it forces you to confront the sheer destructive power that was hidden just beneath the surface of these ordinary-looking planes. It's quite sobering.
And visiting Delta 09, the silo, is also free. Is there interpretation there?
Yes, it's free to visit, and they have a really cool cell phone tour you can take while you're there. It's narrated by Air Force veterans, guys who actually served at these sites, hearing their voices, their stories right there. It adds a lot.
That sounds fantastic. Okay, so we've seen the context of the visitor center. We've seen the missile silo at Delta 09. What's the third piece?
The third piece is Delta Z1, the launch control facility. This is near exit 127. And this is where the missile crews actually lived and worked underground.
Right, you mentioned the unassuming building on top, living quarters, secure.
Exactly. All the surface support stuff is in that building. But the real action, the nerve center, was the launch control center, the LCC, buried 31 feet down.
And this is the part that requires planning if you want the full experience.
Absolutely. This is crucial. To go down into that underground LCC at Delta's O1, you have to be on a ranger-guided tour. There's no other way.
And these tours are popular. Limited space.
Extremely popular and very limited space. The elevator going down is tiny. It only fits the ranger and 6 visitors. That's it. 6 people per tour.
6 people.
Yeah.
So booking ahead is essential. How far ahead?
You really need to plan, especially for summer. Reservations open up 90 days in advance, and honestly, for peak season, they can fill up almost immediately. So book as early as you possibly can.
Okay, message received. Book way, way ahead for the Delta O1 underground tour. What's the tour itself like?
It lasts about 45 minutes. Involves maybe a quarter-mile walk total. You see the topside building first, get briefed on security and life there, then you take that little elevator down.
And you see the blast door? The Domino's door?
You see the 8-ton blast door, yeah. Though it's painted government gray now, sadly. Inside the LCC, the ranger explains the crew's duties, the procedures. Sometimes they even walk you through parts of a simulated launch sequence. It's powerful stuff, a real window into a world that was top secret for decades.
Sounds incredible. But you mentioned physical requirements.
Yes, this is really important for people to know before they book. Because it's a historic facility, not everything is modern, ADA-compliant underground. The main thing is, in an emergency, if the elevator failed, you'd need to be able to climb out via 2 15-foot ladders, unassisted.
Okay, climbing 2 ladders. What else?
You need to be okay in small, confined spaces, obviously, sharing that tiny elevator. And, maybe surprisingly, you shouldn't have a strong fear of heights.
Heights. Going down.
Yeah, the elevator door is an open, great design, so as you descend, you can see straight down the shaft. Some people find that unnerving.
Good to know. Are there restrictions for kids?
Yes. Children have to be at least 6 years old and at least 40 inches tall. And crucially, they also have to be capable of climbing those escape ladders on their own if needed.
So, what if someone can't meet those requirements, or maybe just couldn't get a ticket for the underground tour? Are there other options at Delta O01?
There are. There's an accessible topside tour. This focuses on the above-ground support building and uses photos, videos, and ranger descriptions to explain what the underground LCC is like. It's a good alternative.
Does that need booking too?
Yes, that also needs an advance reservation, usually at least 5 days out, and I think it requires a minimum of 2 people. Best bet is always to check the park's website or call them to discuss accessibility or book that specific tour.
Okay. And if you just show up at Delta O1 without a tour?
You can still see the site from outside the security fence, and there's a cell phone tour you can access that covers the exterior and the facility's story, so you can still learn quite a bit.
Got it. Okay. Stepping back for planning the whole trip. Any advice on timing? Practicalities?
Weather-wise, late spring through fall is generally nicest in South Dakota, but if getting that Delta O1 underground tour is your absolute top priority.
Maybe go off-season.
Exactly. Visiting in the late fall, winter, or early spring could make it significantly easier to snag one of those limited tour spots. Just be prepared for potentially cold weather.
And services. Food, gas, places to stay.
Important point. There are no services like that. No food, gas, or lodging within the park site itself. It's quite spread out and preserved as it was.
So you need to plan for that. Where are the nearest towns?
The town of Wall is nearby, famous for wall drug, which is an experience in itself. That's a good bet. Also, communities near Badlands National Park, like Interior or Kadoka, have motels, food, gas. You just need to drive a few miles outside the park areas. Oh, and remember, the whole area is on mountain time. That catches some people out.
Good tip. What about general accessibility across the sites, beyond the specific Delta O1 tours?
It's pretty good overall. All 3 sites, Visitor Center, Delta O9, Delta O1 topside, have accessible parking. The Visitor Center building is fully accessible. The Delta O9 silo viewing area is accessible.
And Delta O1 topside is generally accessible, just not the underground LCC, unless you meet the tour requirements or take the accessible tour.
Correct. And service animals are allowed throughout the park areas.
And being out there in western South Dakota, it seems like a great place to combine with other visits.
Oh, absolutely. You're right next door to Badlands National Park, which is stunning. Mount Rushmore isn't too far away. And if you're interested in the Air Force connection, the South Dakota Air and Space Museum near Ellsworth AFB is definitely worth a look. You can make a whole trip around the region's history and nature.
It really sounds like visiting the Minuteman site offers this unique, almost tangible connection to a really critical period of recent history.
It does. You move past just reading about the Cold War. You see the actual technology. You stand in the places where people lived under that constant pressure. You grasp the strategy, and you understand the dedication of the crews who operated the system for decades.
It's one of the few places left where you can get that close to this specific part of the Cold War story, right? Yep. See it, feel it almost.
Exactly. It takes it from the abstract to the concrete, literally. Standing over that silo at Delta '09, or hearing about the routines inside the Delta '01 capsule.
Yeah, it really makes you think. Confronting that scale of power, that constant state of readiness that defined the world for so long, it definitely leaves you pondering.
It does. It makes you consider what is the legacy of that whole era, and how does that immense power, still present in other forms today, continue to shape the world we live in now?